Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to Zycel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I am the Market Development Manager here at Zycel North America. Glad to have you here with us today. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions or would like to participate, I like to keep this interactive if possible. Please feel free to use the Q&A section and send me questions, and I will try to answer them in line with the presentation. And today we're going to be talking about how you can utilize our Zycel switches to maximize and to power up Wi-Fi 7. And so with that, again, just welcome to this webinar. And again, thank you for spending this time this afternoon with me. So let's jump right into the slides here. As a quick introduction, we are Zycel Networks. We've been in business now for over 35 years, over 100 million devices making connections today, 650 employees serving in 150 markets worldwide, and over 1 million businesses use Zycel solutions today. We partner with different partners to provide services and provide the technologies that they provide to us, and partner with them to deliver these solutions to a lot of these brands that you see there. We work with industry leaders such as like Norton, Webroot, McAfee, for example, to providing their expertise into our products that then deliver it to you and to your customers. We are channel oriented, so we have David, Andy, and Jacob serving up the North America locations, businesses there, and also in Canada. So we are here to represent you and to work with you, whether it be for distribution, pre-sales support, post-sales support, all of that, just available for you to utilize us as a resource. So if you have any pricing questions, stocking, direct ship, or special pricing, deal registration, please reach out to David, Andy, or Jacob to help you with that. And we can coordinate with your distribution rep as well, and even with your end customers to make sure that the products that they select are correct or fit what they're trying to do. So definitely use us as a resource, especially in today's day and age, trying to figure out what switch, what product fits in with what they're trying to do on the access point side of things, upgrading to Wi-Fi 7. There may be instances where, because they are going with Wi-Fi 7, they may need to upgrade their infrastructure to support not only the speeds, but also PoE. And Zycel is solutions driven. We want to make sure that our clients and our resellers know that we have a complete end-to-end solution for many of the applications that are out there, whether it be for healthcare, for education, for hospitality, or just from a connectivity standpoint. We work with our R&D to create products and work with you as a partner to deliver solutions that will help you. So if you have any feedback, any recommendations, or how you're deploying our solutions and what would make it easier for you, please feel free to reach out, because then we can inform our R&D to help facilitate those things. So Wi-Fi, over 200 million Wi-Fi 7 have been entering the market in like 2024. And we do expect that to continue to grow all the way up to 2.1 billion devices in 2028. The adoption rate, as you probably know, a lot of people are fine with Wi-Fi 6 in terms of networks, etc. But now you could see there's a trend or a tendency where internet connectivity service providers, they're pushing up to gigabit or even beyond gigabit connectivity. And more clients are upgrading their phones, which, today's, iPhones, etc., offer now Wi-Fi 7. Those who are on Android have enjoyed Wi-Fi 7 for a little bit longer as well. But the tendency is, once those consumer devices get Wi-Fi 7, many businesses then shift to a Wi-Fi 7 environment. Today, speed is not necessarily the major concern, unless you're doing a lot of things locally where you could take benefit of, potentially 46 gigs of throughput with Wi-Fi 7. But most people, I would say, in the business will say, well, my internet connection is only 1 gig or maybe 2.5 gig. What's the point of having such high speeds? Well, you can take benefit of those higher speeds if you do have those connections, or you can take benefit within the local REM. A lot of customers will have a storage backup or even internal access to files, et cetera, that are local, or even applications in the healthcare where data is all stored locally so that they can move that around quickly. Wi-Fi 7 can then bring benefit to that. But the major benefit, I would say, for Wi-Fi 7, at least in real world, in maybe to sell the upgrade factor to your customers, is Wi-Fi 7 offers something that's called MLO. Not only the bandwidth better, but multi-link operation is where I think is the major key factor. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But Wi-Fi 7, obviously we've moved from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 6E, which introduced the 6 gigahertz range. And Wi-Fi 7 takes full advantage of that with 2.45 and 6 gigahertz on a very larger megahertz scale. So the throughput potential is much higher. So you can see from a 9.6 gig on Wi-Fi 6 all the way up to now 46 gigs of max throughput potential with Wi-Fi 7. The big piece of why to use Wi-Fi 7 is the introduction of the 6 gigahertz range. And you can see here the 6 gigahertz range is larger in spectrum than 2.4 and 5 combined in terms of space and number of channels you can put into it. More channels means more space that you have to have less interference with each other or to your neighbors. You can be on a cleaner channel so that the throughput and the signal will operate have much better communication. I usually use these channels. My analogy is like a CB radio. We could have a CB radio that, let's say, has only 3 channels. Let's say 2.4 and a couple channels on 5 gigahertz, let's say, right? And we can have conversation, but the moment more and more people are trying to communicate as well, and they're sitting on those 3 channels, you have to keep switching to another channel in order to get maybe potentially a clearer channel to have conversation. Right? We've all encountered that at some point if we've played with a little hand radio trying to communicate. You'd have to go, hey, can we switch over to channel 2, right? And everybody switches over and then can have a conversation again. Now with 6 gigahertz, it adds a lot more channels, so there's a lot more that you can pick from and be away from other people and spread out so that you don't have kind of a conflict of conversation. And Wi-Fi is very similar in that kind of aspect. But I would say, biggest feature of Wi-Fi 7 is multi-link operation. Wi-Fi 6 is a single link operation. It allows for the client device to just talk on 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. You have to choose one or the other. You can't do both. So that's why a lot of clients will put a 2.4 network and then they have a 5 gigahertz network SSID that they label -5G or something like that. It's very typical to do that. But with Wi-Fi 7 and multi-link operation, if the client device supports Wi-Fi 7 and multi-link operation, it has the ability to communicate on 2 or more radios at the same time. So we can talk on 2.4, 5, and 6 if the client device supports it. It means it increases latency, lowers the latency, so improves latency. It increases the data rates potentially. It provides you higher reliability because now you're talking at whatever channel is the best for that client at that time, and helps to avoid interference because it will choose the better links or to move clients over to other channels or to other spectrums and facilitate better communication. So just imagine the CB radio, it automatically just switches to the next channel for you and while on both sides, and then now we can talk on a clean channel automatically. It's almost like a rotating CB radio there. So why is that important? So if you are looking at implementing Wi-Fi 7, you have to make sure that your switch infrastructure can support those things. Wi-Fi 7, the bandwidth, as well as the power consumption, since many of the APs may require you to be at the very least 30 watts of PoE power, but in many cases, it's moving up to the higher end models where you do have triple radios, then on higher bandwidth ports that you have to go to a multi-gig, 2.5, 5 gig, or 10 gig supported switch, with 30 watt, 60 watt, and even in some special cases, some devices may even require 90 watts of PoE. Our products will support the 60 watt PoE standard because even with the triple radio, we're looking at around 35, I would say 35 watts of consumption power needed to run those. So understanding which switch to pick, first I wanted to introduce you to the naming convention that we use today. So if it starts with an RG, that means it's a ruggedized switch. So a lot of our industrial or hard temperature hardened switches start with the RG. GS just stands for a gigabit switch, so they're all gigabit ports. MG is a multi-gigabit port or multi-gig switch, so it typically has like 2.5 gig ports across the way. XGS, so again, GS is gigabit switch with an X is Roman numeral for 10. So it's a gigabit switch with 10 gig uplinks. And the XMG switch, it's a multi-gig switch with 10 gig uplinks. And if it's an XS switch, since there's no G there, it is just a 10 gig switch, means all ports are 10 gig capable and multi-gig, since that's the typical standard. You can do 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig on these ports. And then we just introduced our CX series. So C is also Roman numeral for 100. So it is our CX models. So they are 10 slash 25 gig ports with 100 gig QSFP uplinks. So we have some models that will be introduced there. We already have one model, but we have future models that are going to be in that CX series. If it ends in HP, then they are PoE powered or PoE++ powered. Standard typically is like 375 watts. If they are EP, they're like eco power, like economy power type, lower power budgets, but then lower, price point as well. If you don't need all that power, they're typically like half power, so 180 watts. If it has an FP at the end, they're like full, what we would call full featured or full powered. So they have a larger power budget. In some cases, budgets up to 960 watts or even beyond. And then if it ends in just an F, the F just stands as fiber. So they typically will be fiber ports on it with some copper uplinks. But typically it's a fiber, kind of a fiber concentrator type switch. So PoE, we have already pretty much, the industry's moved into the 30 watt PoE plus side of things. There may be some legacy IP cameras and such that are in the 15.4 watts or even voice over IP type products. But you'll see Wi-Fi 7 being pushed to the 30 watt and 60 watt standards. There is also a 90 watt standard as well, as you can see here. So the Ultra PoE 90 watt can deliver 71 watts at the device itself. So just keep that in mind, even though it says 30 watt, the actual power that is delivered to the device because of the length of the cabling and loss of that is typically maximum 25.5 watts. And then the 60 watt standard delivers about 51 watts down the line. What to keep in mind is important with Zycell products is that we do have intelligent PoE. Now I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more later. We also have accompanying SFP transceiver modules as well as direct attached cables to make it easy for you to uplink devices within the same rack, anywhere from like 1 meter to 10 meters. Or you can go 1 meter to 3 meters, or you can go with the transceivers and have your own fiber runs through there up to 550 meters all the way to 10 kilometers, depending on the transceivers you use. And then we're also launching our QSFP 25 gig and 100 gig transceivers and direct attached cables as well. And so those will be coming in the next couple of months on the price list, and you'll see that there. But multi-gig is the future, not only for infrastructure, but also to push this Wi-Fi 7. And a lot of businesses, we can already see as their internet connection goes up, as the usage of their mobile devices and their laptops, et cetera, come with Wi-Fi 7, the natural tendency is to offer them Wi-Fi 7 in the business. And like I mentioned before, not necessarily the speed is what's important. It's about reliability. I think everyone uses Wi-Fi today. It's so normal for us to expect that the Wi-Fi signal is working and that you can connect your phone, your laptops, et cetera, to that infrastructure via wireless and not have to worry about it not working. But I think that is the biggest complaint. Most people will say, my Wi-Fi stinks, or I can't get connection, or I always have bad signal. I don't get right the coverage where I need it where I need it the most. And Wi-Fi 7 helps to resolve that again with that multi-link operation that I mentioned earlier. But Zyxel does have the XMG 2230 series, the XS 1935 series, and the XMG 1915 series that provides multi-gig connectivity, as well as the PoE power needed to power up these Wi-Fi 7 devices so you can maximize the speed. If you already have it, you might as well maximize it so that communications between that network, even if your internet is not up to that speed, the local network, when you're sending files from computer to server, et cetera, can be take advantage of those kinds of speeds. So it's also perfect for like 10 gig aggregation as well when you're using these switches, especially ones with 10 gig. So Wi-Fi 7 obviously is one that supports 60 watt, but other things like pan tilt zoom cameras, access control. We even see customers who use it for LED lighting, laptop computers, POS readers, calls, kiosks. All of those may use the higher PoE standards requirement, which if you're going to upgrade anyways, you might as well choose or consider those types of switches that provide you with that 60 watt standard so that you are ready, even if that current device or that location doesn't currently use it. But if you are using any of those 60 watt devices, then you would be Wi-Fi 7 ready. So take that into account. So we strongly recommend to use multi-gig switches when you are using our multi-gig or Wi-Fi 7 to power up Wi-Fi 7. It uses the 802.3bt standard, the PoE++, and can deliver up to 90 watts of power through these solutions. All the ports of the XS 1935, for example, they support PoE++. We have large power budgets up to 400 watts to connect up to 8 Wi-Fi 7 access points on an 8-port switch. So just imagine 400 watts on an 8-port configuration. That's a lot of budget power there to maximize your Wi-Fi 7. And it's backwards compatible as well. So even if you only need 4 of the ports to be this for Wi-Fi 7, the other ports can be used for phone systems or any other PoE type device. And you can manage all of these products within our Nebula cloud platform. They are Nebula Flex. So whether you want to use it as a standalone or put it into the award-winning Nebula Cloud, you can choose to do so. We take pride in the quality of our design as well. So we usually use thermal designs to support higher temperature ranges, as well as smart fans to lower the operating noise. We have power filters to enhance the stability. And most importantly, we use solid state capacitors because they are typically the thing that fails the easiest or fails the soonest in any kind of hardware device. By using solid state, you can see our mean time between failure is quite a long time. In many cases, in the over 100 years of time between failures. So based on the components, the quality that we use there, it enhances our products. I mentioned the intelligent PoE function that our switches use. For example, in this particular case, just as an example, when products are used and they have competitor products use what we call classification mode. And classification just says, okay, the device is a 15.4 watt device, so I will put 15.4 watts against the budget. And Zyxel does something a little different. We have intelligent PoE that operates on consumption mode so that it actually only uses what the device actually consumes. So in this particular case, 9 watts, and puts that against the budget. So that doesn't do much when, okay, you have a low power device, but what if you have a much higher power device? So like an IP camera or a Wi-Fi 7 access point, it gets classified as a 30 watt in this case, and puts that against the budget. But in consumption mode, its real consumption is only 16 watt. So you can see if you're using classification mode, it would require for you to power up 20 devices. It would require you to have a 600 watt power budget. And if the device doesn't have it, you have to spend extra just to get it to power up those devices. Now, in consumption mode, we can power up those same 20 devices, but only for 320 watt budget, because that's the actual draw, actual need of the device. So we can reliably power up more devices with the power that we have in the budget of the device. So that obviously saves you money, cost of ownership, as well as not to need a giant power supply for that purpose. We also have then gigabit multi-gig PoE injectors to facilitate deployments of APs that are in hard to reach places that don't have a power plug. You want to PoE inject that one-off device. We have injectors that operate and give you 30 watts, 60 watt, and 90 watts of power. The 90 watt power one is perfect for our flagship access points because it does offer a 10 gig uplink as well as 90 watts of PoE power. Of course, we want you to plug directly into a managed, PoE switch so that you have visibility, you have control over it in the Nebula cloud. So that's typical. But we always find cases where people just need, one extra uplink or one extra PoE that goes a certain distance. Our XMG 1915 series is our, I would say, most cost-effective, cloud manageable, multi-gig switch. You can program this and use it within our Nebula cloud. You can deploy it with our app in the Nebula app and get up running in minutes. This configuration goes up to 16 ports, so it's like an 8-port with and without PoE with 10 gig uplink. They are multi-gig copper ports with 10 gig SFP plus fiber ports. So you can see in this particular case, then it's on the higher end model, then the PoEs are on the first set of 8. So it's kind of like a half power offering up to 180 watts of PoE plus. If you want to get to a full 10 gig switch, these will be coming out in the next month or so. The XS 1935s, these replaced or are replacing our XS 1930 series. Same configuration, but just more power now. So these will offer then multi-gig, all 10 gig ports, as well as a PoE budget of 400 watts on the PoE version. And you can do 90 watts of PoE power on every port up to that budget. It's also quiet operations, as well as those 10 gig fiber uplinks. We've added a USB-C console port as well, so we can use it for console debugging, etc. And these are layer 3 upgradable. If you want to have it, unlocks then the auto PoE device recovery, gives you CLI access. It has the AV over IP modes there for network AV, and then extended security features such as MAC authentication, IP source guard, and some other advanced features there. Let's see, Seth has a question real quick. What is the recommended PoE switch for quantity 11 of the WB 1930 to quantity 6 of if the XMG 2230 isn't available right now due to stock shortages? The 1915 doesn't provide enough power for these access points if other PoE devices are planned. We're looking at the XGS 2220-54FP instead. So Seth, it depends on if you care about the multi-gig throughput. If you're okay with the gigabit throughput on the ports, since maybe the network or the WAN connection is a gig or less anyways, then the XGS 2220-54FP would work because it offers then 960 watts. I believe that the 630S will use less than 30 watts each. So as long as that is the case, the PoE consumption on it is going to be low enough that you can even use the XMG 2230-28HP to power those up and have enough power. Because I think the two models, the 52, um, the 28 and the 52 HP is similar in PoE budget. I guess the other one will be a little bit higher unless you're using the DC power. If you're using the DC power of these boxes, then it would obviously juice it up. And I have some slides coming up soon about the 2230 model. Uh, we would have to talk to Marcus to see ultimately if it is enough um, uh, PoE power. If you can't right now use the 52 HPs, I know those have been hot sellers after we ran the promo, and so those flew out pretty quick. So as long as you're just using gigabit, then the 54 FP should suffice in that regard, and you're just using gigabit connectivity. But if we can look at both of those just to find out, but that would probably be your best option since you are mixing the network anyways with WAX and the WBEs. It might be enough power to use the XGS version of that. And then this is the XMG that I was just talking about with Seth. When you do use the 28 HP, it comes with 700 watts of PoE power. If you use the 52 HP, it's 960 watts. If you put a DC power connector onto these, then you can actually push it to 1400 watts or 12 or 240 watts in this case. Keep in mind though, the configuration of the 52Fs, the 52 HPs have 16 ports of the 2.5 gigs. So if you're needing more multi-gig ports, then you're better off having more of the 28 HPs because these are all 24 ports of 2.5 gig. Whereas this will have 16 ports of the 2.5 gig, but then you have some additional ports that are not, or they will be a lower power throughput. So some of them will be 90, some of them will be 30 watts. So just keep that in mind when you look at the data sheet. So even though this has more ports in a mixed network, this one has, in essence, kind of more ports in the 2.5 space if you're just needing more of those. So some of our customers are just doubling up on the 28 HPs instead. But these would be the multi-gig. This would be your product of choice, I would say, for Wi-Fi 7 upgrades. You can get away with the previous models, the lower end switches that have enough power if you're just looking for a couple of devices to power up, right? The 1915 series would be perfect for those scenarios there. But I would recommend though that you do use managed or Nebula managed switches that give you visibility into what's going on that network, rather than just using an injector or using an unmanaged switch. That's where I think the infrastructure, the choice of your infrastructure becomes important because it's going to help you do troubleshoot in case there is something that goes on. If you have no visibility into the network and someone calls you on the Wi-Fi 7 and challenges that they're having poor signal or it's not, working right, or there's some connectivity issues, you might be able to see a little bit on the APs, but then where does it go after that? You have no visibility once it hits the switch. It could be a switch problem. It could be a wiring problem. You have no visibility into that. But using a managed switch that's in Nebula, then you have visibility, you have tools, and you have troubleshooting ways to even remotely reboot the AP. Maybe it is an AP problem, but then you can see that from the switch and maybe take action on that PoE port. You can then power cycle just that AP port and see if it clears things up, brings it back online, versus then having to send somebody out there physically to take a look at it, and ultimately may end up being that they do the same thing. They physically unplug that port and plug it back in, and everything's cleaned up or it's clear now. So having that visibility, having that manageability can definitely save your kind of help save both sides of the end user, your customer, and yourself from having to go out there. Really save you time and money. Truck rolls are not cheap. So on the The higher end product line, we also have an XS 3800s. These don't necessarily power Wi-Fi 7, but they could still be a core piece where this is your kind of your 10 gig core, and all of the other 10 gig SFP ports are going out to those XMG switches that are actually powering up the devices, but they have to interconnect somewhere. So either you build a ring out of those devices, or you can bring it into a more central core. If you have a larger deployment, those will typically then go and aggregate to like an XS 3800 here to provide you that central management. And then we also now released our flagship layer 3 cloud managed 25 gig slash 100 gig aggregation fiber switch. So these give you 48 ports of 10 gig slash 25 gig SFP28s. And then it also has 8 ports of 100 gigs that you can use for uplink, or you can use it for link aggregation between. So this becomes a very powerful central switch. This could be your core switch, hot swappable power and fans, AC and DC power capable. Layer 3 functionality is being added this year, as well as being able to manage it in the cloud in our Nebula Cloud platform. And because it is layer 3, it will have then CLI, has the network AV, all for a very cost-effective price. So those are the typical higher end switches. Again, if you do have any questions, reach out to our sales reps. We would love to chat with you, because depending on the model of Wi-Fi 7 you use, some people can get away with using just kind of a lower end 30 watt or an existing PoE switch. But you definitely have to take that into account, because if your access point you're using requires more power, you run the risk, if you don't give it enough power, that it will be in a degraded mode. So it might turn off even one of the radios. So you could be, if you had 3 radios, it might only be operating on 2 radios at that point, because it doesn't have enough power to power up the 3rd radio. So you don't want that to happen if that's the case. And it could be easily overlooked if you just plug it in and see, oh, it looks like it's on, it powers up. I don't need to replace my central switches, my PoE switches. So definitely get us involved with that to spec out, make sure that you pick not only pick the right Wi-Fi 7 AP for the application, but then also pick the right switch to power up those APs. Of course, we want to look at good, better, best. What is kind of the most cost-effective way of doing this, and then also what is the best way of doing it to provide you enough power and bandwidth. So if you're not a part of our partner program, please jump onto that. We have our bronze, silver, and gold, where you get discounts at distribution. And to maintain those, you have to maintain a 6-month sales of 6K to stay in silver, 6-month sales of 12K or above to remain in gold. So most of our customers that's a very low kind of entry point. So as long as you're doing 1K a month in Zycel products, you're going to be staying for silver. But we want you to get to the 2K mark, because obviously it's not it's just maybe a couple projects that you are working on to get to that price point. We work through DNH, Ingram Micro, TD SYNNEX, Wave, Target, and Blue Star. If you already have accounts with them, then please let your sales rep know the account number and make sure that your discounts are properly loaded. So you may see in some cases, if you didn't load it at DNH, the prices will look a lot higher than where it is loaded, because we do give you that front end discount. So just make sure wherever you want to buy it, if the pricing looks off, then contact your sales rep. It's likely, if you haven't bought from them in a while, your price tier might have dropped off, and so they have to reactivate it back to your account. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Zycel-US channel, or on YouTube. This webinar will be there as well later on at Zycel America channel. If you'd like to connect with me, you can search me on LinkedIn at Zycel Tri. So just TRI, so ZYXELTRI, and you should be able to find a picture of me. If you have any other questions, I know Seth had that one question, but if you do have any questions now, please feel free to ask that in the Q&A section, and I will get to them. If not, if you'd like to drop off, thank you for your afternoon or morning here. And just a quick webinar just to give you a flavor of the different types of switches that we have. Was just a small sample of that. The portfolio actually expands pretty widely to unmanaged as well as gigabit as well. So you have gigabit, multi-gigabit, and 10 gig. Thank you, Wayne. Yes, lots of content. Always lots of content. We have lots of SKUs. So, just keep this in mind if you do need any help. You don't necessarily need to know the exact answer. You just know they're trying to do something. The customer wants to upgrade to Wi-Fi 7. Let us help you. Let us talk to them, introduce us to your partner and to your customer, and we can talk it through, make sure that you have what you need and they are picking the right products for the application they're trying to do. Because you do have to pick. If it's a small office, one or two customers, you can get away with just a very basic access point. But if they're like, well, we have like 50 users that might be connected to this access point at a given time, then you have to facilitate that with like a smart antenna access point. And so smart antenna, more radios also means more power. So then you have to then look at the PoE switch situation that they have and make sure that they can everything works well there. So you don't degrade the Wi-Fi 7 or hold it back or bottleneck it ultimately if you don't have to. I think that's probably it then. I'll give you the rest of your 24 minutes back. It's just a shorter webinar to give you this a taste of what we have. But again, use us as much as you can to help you with your applications and your solutions. So until next time, thank you for joining me, and we'll talk again at another Tech Talk. Goodbye.